Hello, everybody. I am Matthew Miller, your host. You see me after every Texas football game, and this is the 40 Acre Show, and I am joined by D4 Sports. How are you doing, D4?
I'm great, man. Excited to get in here and first show doing with you, and excited and ready to get into it.
Yeah, I'm D4 and I were talking before this. He's a Texas fan from Tennessee. I'm a Texas fan from Ohio. So the brand, obviously, it's a big brand in college football, big brand nationally, even worldwide. The Longhorn is known. So it's cool to meet someone that isn't from the state of Texas and can share the same level of love for the team that I share. So I think that's really cool.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we'll start out. Obviously, last year Texas 5-7, 3-6 in conference with a loss to Kansas. And at the end of the year, I'm going to be honest, for me, that wasn't much of a surprise. So hopefully this year gets better. We're going to talk to you guys about the newcomers, some strength and weaknesses from last year's team, and how they could have gotten better or stayed the same or even gotten worse possibly. We're also going to talk about position battles, quarterback especially, and then also kicker, which I don't think is being talked about enough. Um, Let's start out with some of the newcomers. There's a lot of them, guys. I mean, from Quinn Ewers to Jai Hall to all those big freshman offensive linemen coming in from that great recruiting class. It's a total transformation, and I think it's going to be good for the team. What do you think, D4?
Yeah, we have a lot of exciting transfers coming in, and as far as that, I mean, we have some exciting freshmen coming in. This is a very upside freshman class. I don't think people are realizing, and we were talking about before the show, someone like Cam Williams, who maybe just be a 3-star, but he's exciting, a massive human being, an SEC top lineman coming in. But we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah, 100%. And Cam Williams is definitely one of those names people need to look out for. Like you said, a 3-star. But I always loved the multiple sport athlete. He played basketball. He was a pretty good basketball player. So that shows you the quickness and agility that you need from someone on the offensive line, along with the big body. So I'm really excited about him. Let's start on the offensive side of the ball. Who is someone you're looking for that you think will come in freshman or transfer that will have immediate impact, not named Quinn Ewers? I think we'll skip that one.
I'm in a three-way battle right now for the ones I'm excited about. Of course, I'm excited for Isaiah Nayer. Uh, he is just a big play receiver. I mean, last year at Wyoming, he had 39 catches, 791 yards, and 11 touchdowns. I mean, Worthy had 12 touchdowns last year. I know he's coming from a slightly less relevant program, of course, but you see what he done in the spring game. There's all kinds of clips of him making absolutely crazy, insane catches in fall camp. So him, I'm excited for the two big guys, Campbell and Banks, to get in there. You could definitely tell by the clips that I've seen that freshman offensive line is massive compared to the older guys. So I'm excited for those two coming in, and of course Nair, big play receiver, and somebody to complement Worthy.
100%. I agree with that. I think Isaiah Nayer is one of those guys that's going to help Xavier Worthy just become more explosive. Obviously, he's already explosive, but it's one of those things where if you only have one guy like that, defenses can put two guys on him. And even if they wanted to throw three at him sometimes, and he's not really going to be able to do much, he's going to be neutralized. So they're not going to be able to do that with Isaiah Nayer. He stretches the field, he's huge, he's athletic, he's got good ball skills. So I really think he's going to help out Xavier Worthy the most. And I wouldn't be shocked if he leads the team in yards and touchdowns. But I still expect Xavier Worthy still have a fantastic sophomore season. I still think he's probably the overall better NFL prospect, but I expect Isaiah Nayer to help him out a lot.
And
Uh,
him being a 6'3" guy, that makes every ball a 50-50 ball,
mhm.
whether he beats you or not. He's that type of receiver that he can just go get it.
100%. And piggybacking off that point, Quinn Ewers, he doesn't have to be as accurate. And that's something that, I mean, young guys kind of struggle with when they get just getting used to the speed of the game. And guess what? That's the quarterback's best friend. You can throw up a 50-50 ball, and sometimes it's a 70-30 ball with the guy like that. And he can help him out. He doesn't have to be as accurate. So I think that'll help out. Another guy that I think people kind of, got away from since all these other wide receiver transfers and Jaleel Billingsley, which basically I think is going to play a lot of wide receiver, even though he's a tight end. is Brennan Thompson. I think Brennan Thompson is going to be good in this offense. I think they're going to use him in a lot of gadget type situation, probably a lot of screens, bubbles, handing the ball off to him. I expect a lot, and a lot of just deep balls. I expect him to have probably not a gigantic impact, but when he does play, I expect him to make enough of an impact where you're like, oh, who's that guy? And then you say his name, and we kind of forgot about him. And not to even mention Troy O'Meara. Troy O'Meara has been talked about for so many years, but he just can't stay healthy. That's his biggest issue. Another big body wide receiver. He could really help in the red zone. So hopefully he can stay healthy. I think the wide receiver room is the second best room on this team. I think it's really exciting, and I think it's going to continue to get better under this coaching staff.
Somebody that we're not even mentioning as well, Ajay Hall. I mean, just a guy that came in to Alabama as a highly touted prospect. You know, he's going to have his opportunities. And like you said, Brennan Thompson, a guy that runs a 10-2, is absolutely insane fast. And like you said, using him in gadget plays, whatever they need, maybe in the return game, you never know. So I'm excited about him as well.
And Tariq Milton. I mean, Sark definitely has a type when you look at the wide receivers. He loves fast guys. He doesn't like small, fast guys. He likes you to be 5'10" to 6 foot, and he wants you to be blazing speed. So that is 100% his type. You saw it at Alabama. You're seeing it now at Texas with the guys recruiting. I think it's really exciting, and I think it's going to open up all kinds of possibilities for this Texas offense. Next up, let's go to another strength. I think the running back room, no one other than people are obviously going to talk about Bijan, and Bijan's fantastic. But this running back room is very deep. It's very talented. I mean, Jaden Blue is our fifth string running back, and I think he's going to be a really good player. Obviously, Jonathan Brooks is one of those guys that I'm all in on. I've said this may be crazy, but I think he's going to put up better numbers when he gets his shot than Bijan Robinson. I'm not saying he's a better player, but I think he'll be running behind better offensive linemen. And he's just got he reminds me of Le'Veon Bell a lot. He sees holes very well. He's patient. And then once he sees it, he bursts through it. I think he's very good.
Yeah, I think we have the number one running back room in the nation. You look at Roschon Johnson. Aside from Bijan, we know what Bijan is. Probably the number one running back in the country. Definitely the number one running back in the Big 12. But Roschon could start on most Power 5 offenses. He's that type of running back. He's a leader. He's very vocal. He does his talking on the field. Very violent runner. You got to think this guy was recruited as a quarterback to come in. So with him, you had Keelan Robinson in there, a little speedy back. You're going to be able to use him in the pass game, the screen game. It's definitely going to be very exciting with that running back room.
100%. I don't think Keelan Robinson got enough play last year. I mean, he's so explosive. He's probably one of the 5 fastest guys on the team. And anytime he touched the ball, like you just think he could have taken it to the house. And I really think he should be used, like you said, in the wide receiver position, in the slot mostly. And then you can also put him in the backfield with 2 guys back there. I think that'd be really interesting as well. I'm hoping to see more of that. And we've heard out of camp that they are using running backs more at the wide receiver position or catching the ball at least. Like Bijan Robinson, I know is expected to catch more balls this year, which I think is really good. When you get those matchups outside on a linebacker, it's really hard to stop any of those guys.
And one thing Bijan talked about in his media availability was he is focusing on his pass protection and wanting to improve on that. You know, with Tashard Choice coming in, Tashard was in the NFL was definitely a pass catching guy and a definite pass protector. So he's emphasizing that in our running back rooms. And we don't know what our offensive line is going to be this year. So that may be very vital to our offense this year.
100%. And it's one of those things too, obviously that's going to benefit you highly to go to the NFL as well, just because obviously he's a great running back, but if you can't pass protect and you can't catch the ball in the backfield, then basically you become disposable. You don't become like a Christian McCaffrey type where they're going to give you a lot of money, because guess what? You can only really do one thing well, whereas Christian McCaffrey does everything well, and that's why he gets paid. So I think it's really smart of Bijan, and not only it will help out the Texas team, it will help out his draft stock, probably solidifies him as a top 20 pick in the NFL draft if he ends up being really good at it. Mm-hmm. So I think it's all around good decision by him, and I'm glad Tashard Choice is working on that with him.
Yeah,
next up, we'll bring up a couple weaknesses on the offense. Obviously, the offensive line. The offensive line was not good last year. You can put blame on Hudson Card and Casey Thompson all you want, but this offensive line wasn't good, and it put them in a lot of bad situations. And hopefully, I'm not asking for it to be great. I don't think it's going to be great, but if it can be an average offensive line with the skill position we have and the talent we have at quarterback, whoever it ends up being, and Steve Sarkisian calling plays, I think this team's ceiling is possibly a Big 12 championship.
Very well could be. I'll get into what I have them going later on. I'm sure we'll talk about the schedule, but
Yeah.
I mean, looking at the August 3rd practice, left tackle, he had Andre Karich, left guard Hayden Connor, center Jake Majors, right guard Junior Anglau, and right tackle Christian Jones. But like we spoke on earlier, the Cam Williams, the Devin Campbell, the Kelvin Banks could work their way in there before the season's end. And I think that'll definitely bode well for our future.
100%. I fully expect one of those freshmen to start at least 2 games this year. I just see that happening, whether that's due to injury or lack of good enough play on the offensive side of the ball, offensive line. And like I said, it's one of those things. It may not look great this year, and I think most Texas fans' expectations aren't super high this year. I'm thinking 8-4, 9-3 max, but it's definitely one of the things moving forward where this could really potentially move us into that upper echelon of college football. If you look at the great college football teams like a Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, they always have at least good offensive lines. It's very rare for them to have an average offensive line. They haven't had a bad one in the last decade at any of those programs. So it's one of those things. You have to control the line of scrimmage on the defensive side of the ball and the offensive side of the ball, and that's really what's held Texas back the last couple of years, including last year.
And you spoke on it, the Alabamas of the world. We have Flood. That's where he came from. He knows how to build one of those massive SEC caliber, run the ball down your throat type of offensive lines. And you can tell that by this class being the best recruiting offensive lineman that we've had in a long time. So
I mean, it's one of the 5 best classes probably in the history of recruiting for the offensive line position. It was insane the amount of talent they got in that class.
Yeah, it is.
Definitely. And he definitely has a type, Kyle Flood. I mean, if you see the picture, I forget his name. I know his number 65 for Alabama. They always show him. And he was gigantic. He looked like if anyone pays attention to Pokemon, the like turtle with the shell on. He was just gigantic human being, and that is his type, man. Like he just wants big, freak humans that he can mold into good offensive linemen, and we've definitely got those body types. Now it's up to him to develop those guys into good offensive linemen.
Right.
Next up, we're going to talk about the defensive side of the ball. There's not many strengths when it comes to the defensive side of the ball, so we might as well just dive into the weaknesses. There's a lot of them, in my opinion. I mean, we couldn't get to the quarterback last year. I believe the most sacks anyone had was 4. We didn't really turn the ball or get turnovers on that side of the ball to give our offenses more opportunities. And we were terrible against the run. Teams would run it down our throat in the second half of games. So there's a lot of improvement that we need on this side of the ball, and hopefully someone like Gary Patterson can come in and help.
Yeah, Gary Patterson is definitely, it doesn't matter what program he goes to, he is going to be a defensive mind and a help in any way possible. You look at the teams he had at TCU, they were always built on defense, and they always did well. So having him there to bounce off with our defensive coordinator and just the teaching aspect of it is going to be phenomenal for our defense, and an extra set of eyes to read the offenses and, just game plan.
100%. And we have a question here. What do you think about the secondary? The secondary, in my opinion, is actually the strong part of the defense. My issue is going to be up front, again, on the line of scrimmage. We need to create pass rush, whatever that is. And, I mean, Pete Kwiatkowski came out, a week, 10 days ago, and they basically asked him pass rush, and he said, what pass rush? So, I mean, he's basically saying it right now. We don't have any pass rush, and it doesn't bode well to me when they're trying to move to Marvin Overshawn to play the edge a little bit. You're taking your best defensive player, most likely on this defense, that plays at the linebacker's position, and moving him to the edge a little bit to say, hey, we don't have a pass rush. We think you're our best player, one of our most athletic players. Let's see if you can do it. That, to me, doesn't scream a lot of positivity there.
If you look at our defense last year, I mean, we had double-digit leads on Oklahoma State, and
Baylor.
In our defense, I think we have more depth this year, which is going to bode well to be able to finish games. We're not going to be as tired. We can sub in and out. And that's not something we didn't have last year. So coming into this year, having more depth and more fresh bodies out there, I think it's going to help us to be able to hold on to those games late when our offense is absolutely exploding, and that can actually hurt us. Our offense, exploding on big plays, and defense is right back out there. So, but I think the depth this year is going to help, and I think with this recruiting class and the recruiting classes coming up, that it's just going to keep getting better.
100%. And it's one of those things where I think Texas' game plan, in my opinion, this year should be try to get a lead early on and then just pound the rock so you give your defense time to rest and just be conservative. But you got to get that lead early. If we don't get that lead early, I just don't see us beating teams for that, because we don't have a lot, especially with the really good teams like the Alabamas, the Oklahomas of the world. Because if we take them out in the deep waters, they're going to beat us, because they have they have at this point, I believe, a little bit of a talent edge when it comes to their first tier guys. Obviously, depth wise, I think we're good, and we're going to be better there. But we just haven't stacked up enough classes yet to where our first string is as good as our second string, and our second string is as good as the third string, stuff like that. So I just don't see that happening.
Right.
But secondary wise, there's some guys that I'd like to talk about, bring up. Ryan Watts, I think he's a name to keep out for. I think he's going to have a really good year. I mean, last year at the Ohio State practices, guys on here that go that are with Mark on the Ohio State channel, you guys should check them out as well. They were talking about him competing with the wide receivers, and the wide receivers were talking about him like he's one of their best cornerbacks. So coming over, he's definitely going to help out. Really, there's only one guy that I trust right now, and that's Jahdae Barron. He played very well coming down the stretch last year. Deshaun Jameson did not. So we really need a number 2 guy to step up, and I'm hoping that's Ryan Watts.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have better play. I mean, we have Deshaun Jameson, Anthony Cook, Jaron Thompson, Ryan Watts, Barron. But I'm looking forward to some of these second guys. We have the freshman Terrence Brooks coming in, Jalen Gilbo. Those guys are going to have to grow up fast if we want depth at the defensive back position. So I look forward to seeing their progression and seeing how they come out of fall camp and where they land on the depth chart as well. Of course, Jameson's going to start, Ryan Watts and Barron. All 3 of those are definitely going to be solid, but it's the guys behind them that I want to see step up.
100%. And hopefully Deshaun Jameson can have a little bit of a bounce back year to the year before last year, because he wasn't great last year. He was okay. But like I said, Jahdae Barron stepped up, and Terrence Brooks definitely has the talent. If you watch his tape, he's very good. The only issue is he's 17 years old. I find it very hard to push all your chips on a guy like that in his first year at 17. I don't want to do that. I don't want to put the expectations on that guy to do that. I expect him to be very good going forward, but I don't really expect much of him this year. The one guy that does come back that I'm very excited about, that played, I think, was our either best or second best defender last year, was Anthony Cook. He's going to move to safety. He was spectacular last year. He really balled out. He finally lived up to his potential, and I was happy to see that.
Yeah, I think the move to safety is going to be phenomenal for him. He's definitely a type of guy that can ball hawk, and that puts him in the position to do what he's best at.
Yeah, I could see a Caden Stearns type freshman year from Anthony Cook this year. I think he's that good. I think he can be a second or third round pick in the NFL draft. He showed me a lot last year, unlike some of the other guys that he came in with, like a BJ Foster, who never really lived up to his potential and then transferred out. He finally started to live up to that potential. Let's talk about another about the linebackers, because I like the starters. The depth after that is scary. If we lose one of those guys, I'm not sure how that's going to turn out, because you got Jalen Ford, you got DeMarvion Overshone, you have Tucker Dorsey Diamante from James Madison. He's a good player. After that, and David Gabenda as well. After those 4 guys, it gets pretty scary.
Yeah, of course we have Luke Brockermeyer, who's injured right now, but you're right. The depth after those guys, Jalen Ford, like Paxton in the comments section, is catching eyes. I've seen some projected depth charts that have him starting at middle linebacker over Tucker Dorsey, but we'll have to see how that, that's all speculation and all that. But that is definitely a weakness that we have. If you start moving DeMarvion Overshone around and taking him out of his comfort zone, that's not going to bode well when it comes to his progression as he's the leader of that defense. So
And I like Luke Brockmeyer. He's a solid player, but there's no business, no offense to him, where he should be starting at the University of Texas. He's just not that good.
yeah, he's
But he's a good backup. Like, I would take him as a backup and throw him in there 20 to 30% of plays, but he should not be playing more than that. Jalen Ford popped for me. Whenever he was on the field, I was like, wow, that guy's very good. Why is he not playing more? So I'm not surprised that he's popping now. And it's also one of those things. Practice is important. I'm not saying that. But if you talk to anyone, there were guys that are not good practice players. You throw them in a game and they're amazing. Vince Young being an example of that. That's why Vince Young didn't play for a while, is because when he was on the practice field, people would say, not really his thing, is it? Like, he's not that good. Throw him in a game, he was amazing. So there are guys like that. There are also guys that are terrible in practice, good in practice. You put them in a game and they're terrible. So it goes both ways. I think once the live bullets start flying, we'll find out what we have. We're going to find out what we have immediately, basically. We play Alabama week 2. We'll see what happens there. But this linebacker room, if 2 injuries happen, it could be pretty ugly.
Yeah, we're in trouble. If Overshone or Ford or Dorsey go down, we're definitely hurting.
Yeah. And that's by far the position group that has the least amount of depth on this team, in my opinion. The defensive line's good. You can rotate a bunch of those guys in. Secondary's pretty good. You can rotate guys there. But the linebacker room just isn't what it needs to be yet. Let's talk. We might as well talk about it because it's going to come up. It's what everyone wants to know. The battle between Quinn Ewers and Hudson Card. I think most Texas fans realize, like, Quinn Ewers is going to start. I don't see a scenario, unless he just got awful through these practices, where he doesn't start. I'm really hoping I don't hear what we kind of heard last year, where it's like, we'll play both of them in the first game. I didn't really like that, so hopefully that doesn't happen this year. Hopefully someone is named the starter week 1. They play the season as long as they don't get hurt, and they're the starter at the end of the year. But I expect that to be Quinn Ewers. What about you?
I expect it to be Quinn Ewers as well. A few things kind of tip it off to me, when you're bringing transfer guys, like when we were making the pitch to Jordan Addison, Isaiah Nair, stuff like that, it wasn't Hudson Card that was meeting with these guys. It wasn't Hudson Card that was taking pictures, stuff like that. It was Quinn Ewers. So I think that's saying that, this is our future. This is our guy, to me personally. And, people have a misconception about Hudson Card. He's only played quarterback for a few seasons. Coming out of Lake Travis, he only played 1 season as quarterback. He was a receiver before that, sitting behind Charlie Brewer that went to Baylor and then Utah. So he's not head and shoulders experienced over Ewers like, some people may think. So I'm definitely excited to see who the starter is going to be. I'd like to have it sooner rather than later. And I'd like for that starter to play the entire Louisiana Monroe game to get that experience under their belt and get ready for Bama in week 2.
Yeah, 100%. I would agree with that point. Other than if we're up like 56-10, 5 minutes left, fine, throwing the guy. But I 100% agree. Like, meaningful snaps, there should not be splitting meaningful snaps between those guys. Like, you're going to play Bama week 2. That guy's going to need every rep he can possibly get. You need to treat that as basically a scrimmage. Use everything that you possibly can out of that game to see what works, so you can use it in the Alabama game. And hopefully that will be Quinn Ewers. And like you said, that was a great point. When you have someone meeting with those guys to play catch and have team meetings and stuff like that, that proves he's probably the leader in the locker room already at that point, at that position. And then another thing too, this is starting to turn into like the NFL, guys. This guy's getting paid so much money. You got to start him, I feel like. It's kind of like the Washington Commanders traded for Carson Wentz, and Taylor Heineke was basically asked, do you expect to start? And he's like, I'm getting paid $2 million. The other guys are getting paid $30 million. So no, I'd like to start, but there's not a chance I'm going to start over him. That's kind of like what I feel like what we're going towards in college football. This guy's getting paid so much, and the boosters expect a return on their investment and stuff like that. And all the NIL guys do as well. So I expect Quinn Ewers to start.
Like Gary Lewis in the comments section says, Ewers impressed during the spring game on that long throw. Ewers is worth enduring the growing pains. I agree. If the quarterback battle is that close, you have to go with the guy with more upside and more of a future.
100%. And if Quinn Ewers does win this job, I think Hudson Card stays the season, then transfers. It doesn't really make much sense for him to transfer out immediately because he's not going to start wherever he goes right away anyways. So I think that'll be interesting where he goes because he is talented. There's no doubt about that. The guy's got raw talent there. That's why he was able to play the wide receiver position. He's he's a very good athlete at the quarterback position. So I think that'll be interesting. Next up, or do you want to make a quick comment?
No, I was saying that's why he was the number one dual threat quarterback coming out in high school. So
yeah. And another one that no one's talking about, another battle, is the kicker position, and the punter position, because Cameron Dicker, he handled 95% of the kicking duties last year. That's a big deal. He was a good kicker, even better punter, actually. Was very good, one of the best hunters we've had, along with Michael Dixon. And now he's with the Los Angeles Rams, so that position needs to be filled. And if we're going to be in a lot of close games, that guy really matters.
Yeah, definitely. And the guys we have a few transfers coming in, and it's definitely going to be interesting because special teams is such a vital part of winning a football game. And you definitely want to have the guy that can hit the kick at the end, like Cameron Dicker did in his freshman year against Oklahoma. You definitely want a guy that can make the kicks at the end of the game or be consistent and put points on the board when we have to settle. So.
And I think that's a great point, Gary Lewis. Cameron Dicker was excellent and dependable. Dependable is 100% the right word. You knew what you were getting. Whenever there was really a big kick, he made it. There was some inconsistencies 100% where I don't think he kept his concentration, make kicks that weren't as meaningful as some others, which is an issue heading forward for him in his NFL career. But he was dependable at Texas, and that's all you can ask for. And he, like I said, he was even a better punter. I wish he was able to continue that. I wish he was able to do that longer and see what he could have become, because he could have been one of the 2 or 3 best punters that Texas has ever had. And that is an important position. And you saw the jump from special teams last year, guys. Jeff Banks came in, and we started blocking punts. We started being sound on the special teams. So that's a very important part of the game that people don't really focus on.
I agree 100%. And what worries me is I know we have a transfer coming in, a long snapper. I'm glad we have a transfer. We're not depending on a freshman coming in that, all the pressure on him, because, that's just as important getting the ball back there as it is kicking it. So, and the transfer we have coming in, Zach Edwards, who do we say he was for? He came from Texas Tech.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. So, and then, kickers, we have Burt Auburn, a redshirt freshman, Gabe Lozano, also from Texas Tech, right?
Yes.
It's a redshirt sophomore transfer. And then, of course, freshman Will Stone and long snapper Zach Edwards and Lance St. Louis. So,
who's been there for a while.
Yeah. So,
yeah, Jeff Banks credited him because he said he's kind of kept this room together, kept it close, because without him, we'd basically starting over at all those positions, and I don't think that'd go over very well this year if that was the case.
No.
But now, I think we should get to the schedule. The schedule, obviously, Louisiana Monroe, the first game of the season. I think we should win that game. I think we should win it convincingly. We played a better team last year with Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns, and we won that game pretty easily, controlled it for most of the game. So I think we should win that game. Like I said, treat it as a glorified scrimmage, because you know who we have coming in week 2, and we know that's not going to be fun. How do you think the Alabama game is going to go?
First of all, I think we have to treat the Louisiana Monroe game, as Gary Lewis said, as a business trip. We're going to take care of business. We know what we have to do. They're not going to roll over and play dead. We have to go in there and do what we need to do. I think that the Alabama game, we have the firepower to keep up with Alabama on offense. I look for us to keep it close, maybe into the third quarter possibly, and then you'll see the depth start to play a factor. I would love to win this game. I'd love to play spoiler. I'd love to shock the world. I just don't see it happening.
No, and the thing is, we just said one of the biggest weaknesses on this team is offensive line. We're not sure how that's going to go this year. We like it going forward. Guys, the best player in college football resides on that Alabama defensive line, and he is a freak, and I'm scared to death of what he could do to our quarterbacks, our running backs, our offensive linemen. Will Anderson could wreak wreak havoc. This game, he could single-handedly win this game. He could do what Khalil Mack did at Buffalo versus Ohio State, which is keep them in the game. But the difference is Khalil Mack was by himself. Will Anderson's got other dudes behind him, and that guy scares the hell out of me.
And on the other side, Dallas Turner, man, he is no slouch. You got two guys come screaming off the edge, pass rushing. I personally have Dallas Turner ranked in my top 10 when it comes to edge rushers. Of course, Will Anderson is number 1 on everybody's list. And then you got Henry To'o in the
battery middle. Low.
Oh, sorry. The battery's low. But I'm excited for that game because it's going to give us a gauge.
100%, and we'll see where we're at. And Alabama's special, guys. So as Texas fans, don't take a loss, let's say 45-20, as a big deal, because I think it's Alabama and Ohio State this year, and then everybody else. So it's like you said, it's a gauge. We'll see where we're at, and that will tell us where we're going in the future. It will tell us where we're going in this year as well. And there's no team on our schedule that could hold a candle to Alabama going forward after that. So we'll see what happens. And it would be awesome to win this game, but there's also a side of me where Texas has not handled good things happening to the program throughout the past 10 to 15 years. Like, they usually will do something good and then be like, oh, we're on the right path, and then immediately bang, crash and burn. So that it may not be the worst thing to get absolutely demolished here in this game. I'm not going to take too much away from it. Like I said, it's the second game of the season. It'd be nice to win. It'd be nice to take them deep into the fourth quarter and see what happens. But it is Quinn Ewers' second game. It's Steve Sarkisian's second game of his second year. I'm not going to take a lot from this game, to be honest with you. Like I said, Alabama is either the best or second best team this year. I think you basically pencil them in Ohio State into the playoffs. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what we need to take away from this is you're competing against one of the top tier teams in the nation and have been for the past 12, 15 years. You have to get up for that game. It's definitely with the roster turnover and Sark bringing in the guys that he has to compete with the likes of Alabama. Sark knows Alabama. He was there. Flood knows Alabama. Jeff Banks knows Alabama. So I think the coaching schemes could bode well as for the game just as much as the players on the field, the schemes and things like that.
Kill Minded Music. Don't bring up that game. That game still hurts to think about. That game was 24-21 with Garrett Gilbert playing absolutely horrendous. I'll never forget that fumble heading in before halftime and getting taken back by Marcel Darius. If Colt McCoy plays the game, we win that game by 2 touchdowns. I fully believe that. I believe that. I don't care what anyone says. We controlling that game early. That team, like I said, if they were so much better than us, they should have killed us that whole game, and they really didn't. But we'll keep it to this year. Next, we play UTSA, the third game of the season. UTSA was very good last year. Obviously, Jeff Traylor coached at Texas. They did lose a lot. I still think they're a good team. They're not as good as last year. So we should win this game. But it wouldn't shock me if this is a 14 to 20-point game, somewhere between there, like semi-close, not like a super big blowout. What do you think?
They are a solid team. But they should not be able to stay on the field with us. The talent gap should be that wide of a margin, and it's one of those games we should beat who we should beat by a lot, and I think this is one of those games. It should not be within 30 points. I think we should go in and handle business just like the ULM game, and I think it should we shouldn't overlook these guys just because we're getting into our conference after that.
100%, and we'll just go right over there. I think you and I both at this point would have Texas at 2-1, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so first conference game, September 24th at Texas Tech in Lubbock. Texas Tech, kind of a weird year last year, and they start out well, fire their coach. They're starting a new regime there. You've heard, they're starting to spend money on the football program with NIL. Every guy getting $25,000 as soon as you basically commit to Texas Tech. So they definitely throwing a little bit of money around, which could definitely help them because that is a decent sized brand. It's not a great brand, but it's bigger than most brands in college football. And they play an interesting brand of football over the last 15 years, so very explosive offensively. We'll see what the new coach has to provide. I expect us to win this game, but again, guys, the past 12 years at Texas, we go into games, we expect to win these games because we have more talent, and we think we have the better coach on the sideline, and then we end up getting disappointed. So what do you think?
Another one of those games, you have to handle business. I think we have the talent gap on them. You can't start out – I have Texas Tech in the lower tier of the Big 12 this year. down there with the Kansases, the West Virginias, stuff like that. So we're going to have to show up first conference game, ball out. Cannot underestimate anybody this year at all. Tyler Slaw or Shaw.
Shao.
Okay, is their starting still their starting quarterback, I believe, and they're dangerous. They lost their top pass catcher, but the Texas Tech offense is always going to be dangerous.
100%. And Shao got hurt, obviously, in the Texas game. And there was even reports coming into the game he was already banged up a little bit and then obviously broke his collarbone. So that obviously didn't help. And they went to their backup, and he was not very good. So from there on out, we kind of control that game, manhandled them, and they're probably want to get revenge. I mean, the last 2 years playing them has been crazy. We were down, went to overtime in that one game where the guy's throwing horns down with 2 minutes left thinking the game's over. We come back, win, luckily. Tom Herman might have been fired after that game if they lost that game. And then we play them next year. The quarterback gets hurt, and we just absolutely demolish them, putting up 70 points. So I feel like this is a dangerous spot. But luckily, UTSA is in there in between to get us refocused and hopefully back on track after the Alabama game. If it was more of a easy opponent, like if you switch UTSA first game and University of Louisiana Monroe third game, I think this is more of a trap game if that's the case. But I feel like they win this game. Next up, we go, or thank God we don't have to make the trip. West Virginia comes into Texas. Again, the Big 12 is just kind of weird this year. I don't think there's any great team, but I think there's a bunch of good teams and potential good teams. And I think West Virginia is one of those teams, obviously getting JT Daniels. I believe this is Neil Brown's last dance if this team isn't 7-5 or better. He hasn't been great there at West Virginia. He's really gone downhill. And I like the hire coming from Troy, but then he hasn't really lived up to those expectations. What do you think?
They have improved. I don't think they're going to be I think they're going to be a middle of the road top team in the Big 12 this year. JT Daniels is a phenomenal passer, but when you're playing behind a terrible offensive line and you're not as mobile, he may move well in the pocket, but you see when he gets rushed, he's kind of a statue back there. So I don't see them being that much improved. They do bring in Graham Harrell as their offensive coordinator, and he has done well everywhere he's been, like jacking up the points per game everywhere he's been in his first year. So it definitely it's one of those games I hate to keep repeating myself. You got to take care of because they have owned us in Austin, but we have owned them in Morgantown, and it's in Austin. It's in Austin this year, so we have to stop that trend.
Yeah, 100%. Texas, what they really need to do is when teams come into Texas and you're already better than them, you need to win those games very easily. And this is one of those cases where I agree with you. I don't think West Virginia is going to be great this year. I think it'll be an average team, probably 6-6. I wouldn't shock me if Neil Brown gets fired because of that. But you did bring him Graham Harrell, and he's a very good offensive coordinator. He is reunited with JT Daniels because he was the offensive coordinator for him at USC. And I wouldn't shock me if Neil Brown is fired, Graham Harrell takes over there permanently as the head coach because I mean his name's been thrown around for head coaching jobs now, and he's started to get to that level, so that'll be interesting. But I fully expect Texas to win this game. So right now we're taking 4-1. Again, the same exact record, same basic scenario as last year, heading into the Red River rivalry, which I hope I'm going to this year. I'm very excited about that. I think it's going to be a great game. It's going to be obviously a fantastic atmosphere, in my opinion, one of the 3 best rivalries in college football. And again, kind of another team in the Big 12 to where you don't really know what to expect because you have Lincoln Riley leaving town, going to USC. You have Brett Venables coming in. I expect the defense to take a little bit of a step forward, but the problem is I expect the offense to take a step back. So what are you getting here with Oklahoma? What do you think?
They have lost a lot. They haven't. I mean, they lost Caleb Williams, who was the starter at the end of the year last year. Didn't start at the beginning of the season. They lost their backup quarterback and Spencer Rattler to South Carolina. Kennedy Brooks is gone. You still have Eric Gray. They lost Mario Williams to USC. They still have Marvin Mims. They lost a lot on defense, and Biaconti going to I think that's his name, going to the NFL. They had several guys they lost off that defense. I don't think with everything they lost, even bringing in Dylan Gabriel as quarterback, who I think is a phenomenal quarterback. I have him ranked as number 5 on my quarterbacks coming into the season. But I don't think they have the talent coming in that they lost, and I think they take a huge step back. And right now, it's 8:56 Eastern Standard Time, and Oklahoma still sucks.
Yes, they do. And I agree. I fully expect us to beat them this year. We should have beat them last year. I think this is a revenge game. I think we go in very pumped up, even more than usual for this game. I also think usually Texas coaches, year two, they usually beat Oklahoma no matter what. Even Charlie Strong did it. So I expect them to win this game. That probably pisses off some Oklahoma fans. I don't give a shit. I expect us to be 5-1 after this game, heading into a kind of a weird game. I'm glad it's at home, Iowa State, because Iowa State has always played us close the last 5 years. They don't always beat us, but they play us close. Now, when we go to Iowa State, most of the time they have beaten us. Even when they were bad, when Charlie Strong was here, they kicked our ass that one year. I think we only scored 3 points. So this is a very interesting game. But again, they lose a lot. They lose Brees Hall, Brock Purdy, Tariq Milton transferred over here. They lose a bunch of guys on defense. They have it's basically starting over for Matt Campbell at Iowa State, and I was kind of surprised he didn't jump on board one of those big jobs.
Definitely, with everything that he lost, like you mentioned, with Mike Rose on defense, they lost their best defensive back, Asim Young, to Ole Miss. I mean, everybody seems to see the writing on the wall, with Iowa State being down this year, lower than because they had high expectations last year and they did not meet those whatsoever.
Yeah.
But Iowa State's always there for a trap game. They're definitely going to be well coached, but we don't know what they have in. But I have this as a W for Texas, and I think we'll be 6-1.
Yeah, that'd put us at 6-1, and I agree with that. And that's the thing too. After this, we're gonna go through the schedule, put what we have up here. The thing is, I have a number in my head. It's probably not gonna match what I'm thinking right now, but it's because Texas again has over the years. You look at the schedule like, oh, this team should go 9-3, 10-2, but then realistically, because you know what has happened year in and year out in the history, and that's how you kind of predict the future is based on past history, that they lose games that they shouldn't. And this is 100% a game they should not lose, but they possibly could. I think there's a lot of games like that on this schedule. Next up, we go to Oklahoma State at Oklahoma State, October 22nd, basically a week before Halloween. So this is always a crazy atmosphere, crazy game. Oklahoma State, again, Spencer Sanders seems like he's been there forever, almost as long as Mike Gundy. He's coming back. They lose some weapons. And obviously, the biggest loss, in my opinion, is Jim Knowles. I think he's one of the 3 best defensive coordinators in college football. Look what he did when he got there. They got continuously better over the years. I expect him to do the same thing with Ohio State's defense. I'm not saying Ohio State's going to take this massive leap, but I expect a leap for Ohio State this year on the defense side of the ball, and then continuously going forward. So I think that's a gigantic loss for Oklahoma State.
Yeah, but they do bring in Derek Mason from Auburn. He's no slouch as a defensive coordinator. He's not a very good head coach.
No.
But you got to look where he came from.
Yeah.
So I have this as a loss for us. Spencer Sanders does have the experience there at quarterback. They did lose a lot on defense, but I think that Oklahoma State is probably second in the Big 12 right now, behind Baylor. And I have us slightly behind them. But it's one of those games, if we go down to 3, 10-2, this is one of those games that we could just come out and absolutely dominate Oklahoma State. They don't have a high-powered offense or a high-powered defense. They're just consistent.
Yeah, 100%.
And they're consistent 9-10 win seasons, and they have one of the best coaches in the Big 12 in Mr. Mullet. So
100%. I think he's underrated. He does the best I think you could possibly do at Oklahoma State. I don't think you can ever really win a national championship there, but I think you can always compete for Big 12 championships, and he basically does that year in and year out. I have this as a win, actually. Now, the next game I believe is a trap game. It scares me, and it scares me for a couple reasons. It's at Kansas State. Texas does not really do well at Kansas State. They haven't in the past. You have Adrian Martinez, who I like. He's very inconsistent, though. One game will play great, one game will play bad. But then you have that little guy in the backfield that's doesn't get enough appreciation, in my opinion, to Deuce Vaughn. I think he's one of the 5 best running backs in college football. He's very good. And I think they might be able to draw up some things with him that will give Texas a lot of issues, especially with linebacker, this being deeper in the season. I expect our linebackers to be nicked up. If you put him in the passing game, I think you take full advantage of that. I think Deuce Vaughn can exploit our linebackers. I expect Texas to actually lose this game. What do you think?
I don't have us losing this game. I think we may differ on that a little bit, but Deuce Vaughn, definitely I have him ranked as my 3rd best running back in the nation behind Bijan and Travion Henderson of Ohio State. He is very versatile, and I think with you bringing in Martinez to be your quarterback, they had Skylar Thompson last year, and he was a good hard runner, but Martinez can change a game when it comes to his running ability. But I've seen what he done at Nebraska, and it did not impress me, and I don't see him coming into another middle of the road Kansas State team. But I see where you're coming from, because Kansas State's always good for beating somebody that they shouldn't.
100%. And they have a good coach. What he did at North Dakota State, obviously creating that powerhouse, and then he's been okay at Kansas State. Hasn't been great. They dealt with a lot of injuries though over the past couple of years. So if they're healthy, I think they definitely give us issues, and that's why I have it as a loss. Next up, we go to Gary. We play Gary Patterson's old team. I fully expect this to be a win for the simple fact that Gary Patterson is definitely going to be in that defensive room that whole week, game planning against his team. He's probably going to use that same hatred that he used to have for Texas and use it against TCU. I expect TCU going forward to be good, though. I like Sonny Dykes and what he's doing in the Dallas area, recruiting-wise. But this year, I don't think they have enough. I think Texas wins this game by a lot.
I do too. I like Max Dugan, their quarterback. He's in a quarterback battle right now, but I see with them losing Zach Evans to Ole Miss, they lost O'Shawn Mathis to Nebraska, their leader on defense. I just don't see them having the horses to be able to keep up this year.
100%. Like I said, going forward, the guys they got down there, I think they're going to recruit very well. I like Sonny Dykes. Kind of fits in what I think TCU should have been doing this whole time, getting enough athletes on offense and just throwing it around a lot. So I think that they'll be good going forward, but not this year. I think we'll beat them by 3 touchdowns. Next up, sadly, it's a revenge game. It 100% shouldn't be, and we should beat this team by 40-plus points. It's Kansas. They were obviously terrible last year. They've been terrible forever, but they've continued to beat us. So we need to go in there and beat them by at least 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, I agree. Last year we were dinged up, didn't have the depth. We can make any excuse we want to for that Kansas game. They got up for it and we didn't. So I definitely see us having a revenge game. And like you said, that's so sad to say that we're going to have the revenge game against Kansas. That breaks my heart to say.
The only time you should ever say that is in basketball, and that's literally the only times those words should be uttered, because in football, you should never have to say that, and sadly, we've lost to them twice in the past 7 years. So we need to break that trend. We need to continually beat this team into the ground like they should be. They're a walking mat of the Big 12, and we need to treat them as such. We got a super chat from Tim Prongley. Thank you for that, Tim. What's up, D4? Loved your latest video. If you guys aren't subbed, you are missing out 100%. Go subscribe to D4 Sports. Go like his content. Subscribe over there. And while you're at it, can you please like this video? Subscribe here if you're not. We have content coming forward. Like I said, I do a post-game show after every game. And possibly I could be doing a post-game show live from the Red River Rivalry. So if you don't want to miss out on that, please subscribe to this channel. Please like this content. Mark does a fantastic job across this platform. Thank you guys very much. Next up, the last game of the year and potential game to where Texas could be playing for a possible shot at a Big 12 championship. At the same with this team, Baylor, who won the Big 12 championship last year. Dave Aranda did a fantastic job. This team is very good. And I think they're going to be pretty good this year as well. What do you think?
Yeah, their quarterback last year when he came in and replacing Jerry Bohannon, he was definitely a firecracker. In their, I believe it was their bowl game, that he barely missed a pass, and he was absolutely money. I think he brings them a different type of offense than Jerry Bohannon did, because Jerry Bohannon was mainly a runner. He contributed in the running game, and I think this guy's a better pure passer. I think their defense is going to be stacked, and Dave Aranda's probably the best coach in the Big 12 right now, as far as being proven. And I hope Sark overtakes that this year as the number one coach in the Big 12. I think Aranda and Matt Campbell are two of the best in the Big 12 right now. But I want to give us this win. I want us to be 10-2, but I don't see this being a win for us.
I don't either. This is where we agree on our losses. I think Baylor wins this game just for the simple fact I don't see Texas going 10-2. I think 9-3 is the ceiling here. I expect somewhere between 9-3, 8-4, and this Baylor team is going to be good again. Blake Shapen, like you said, opens up so many more possibilities. Gary Bohannon was okay. Not a great quarterback. He's not super accurate, but he's a little bit more mobile. But Blake Shapen can throw it all around the yard, and I think that opens up a lot of possibilities for that offense. I think, obviously, the defense is going to be good because Dave Aranda is a fantastic defensive coordinator. So I think he's, like you said, a very good coach, probably the best coach in the Big 12 right now between him and Matt Campbell, and probably Mike Gundy if you want to throw him in as well. So I think Baylor does win this game. I think that puts us at 9-3. Do you agree that we're a 9-3 football team this year?
I do agree that we're a 9-3 football team. If we were to drop one that we shouldn't, 8-4, I still think it's a successful season for us. And 10-2, I would absolutely be jumping for joy if we took out an Oklahoma State or a Baylor, which I'm not going to lie, we're definitely capable of doing. And I think that we are definitely primed and ready on offense. It's just our defense that we need to worry about. I would love to see it be if we lost to an Oklahoma State, if we lost to a Baylor, I'd love to see it turn around and have a rematch with them in the Big 12 championship game.
100%. That would be fun, and I think that would if we lost to them, that would actually benefit us as the loser. I think you learn more from losses, to be honest with you. So that would be interesting. I don't see that happening, though. I agree with you 100%. I think 10-2 is the max we can do this year, in my opinion, and we should be super excited if that were to happen. I think that would bode insanely well. I think the recruiting would even go to another level if that's even possible. And then just moving forward also into the SEC, that would even gain more momentum. So that would be amazing. I expect the same thing, though. I think 8-4, 9-3, and 100% that's a good season. 8-4 is still a good season. That's a 3-game turnaround. That's very good. If you have another 3-game turnaround the next year, guess what? You're 11-1, and that's 100% possible because, in my opinion, it's not this year, guys. It's a building block year. Next year is the year for Texas to compete for a Big 12 championship and possibly a national championship.
We definitely have the guys coming in. I definitely love this recruiting class that we brought in this year and what it's shaping up to be next year. You know, people can say what they want to about Arch Manning, but this kid is bringing people with him. People want to come play with him, and it's showing by the amount of talent that we have committed right now. And whether they stay committed, you never know about a 17-year-old kid, what they're going to decide on. But we definitely have the building blocks with this phenomenal offensive line recruiting class that we're bringing in this year with the Kelvin Banks, with the Cam Williams, with the Devin Campbell. I'm excited. It's definitely shaping up, and I hope we have a head of steam coming into the SEC.
100%. And guys, throw your questions in here. We'll probably take questions for 15, 20 minutes and jump out of here. We've gone through a lot so far, and I've had a good time doing it. But again, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It really helps out. It helps build Mark's brand. And go over to D4 Sports, help grow his brand, like his content, subscribe over there as well.
Yes, sir.
Let's see. This is quite the comment. Baylor's definitely making the playoffs. The only way Baylor doesn't make the playoffs if Clemson goes 12-1 with an ACC title win. I don't know. To be honest with you, I've narrowed it down to such a 2-team race at this point because Ohio State and Bama, in my opinion, are such head and shoulders above everyone else. I haven't even thought of the 3rd and 4th spots in the playoff. What about you, D4?
I think that it's a possibility that they could. I don't see Baylor making it into the playoffs because I think that the top 1 to 4 teams in the Big 12 are going to take turns knocking each other off. And I have Baylor at 2 losses this year, so I don't see that happening.
I agree. I think the Big 12 this year, there's a lot of parity. There's only going to be 1, maybe 2 bad teams. The rest of the teams, I think, are capable of beating each other on any given Saturday. So they're going to just be handing each other losses. And I think the Big 12 champ probably has 2 losses. And a Big 12 champ in this year's Big 12 doesn't make the playoff, in my opinion. ACC is better this year, by the way. Pointing out Clemson going 12-1. Unless they get that quarterback position figured out, they are not going 12-1. And I actually think Cade Klubnik, who I think is just as good, if not better, than Quinn Ewers, I love that kid, has a chance to win that job and push them to that. I don't think DJ can do it. I really don't. I just don't see him bouncing back enough to where they're 12-1 with him at quarterback.
Yeah, Cade actually beat Quinn in the state championship game. So, shout out to Paxton, man. He is a diehard Texas fan, and he's a great follower, and definitely like to give him a shout out.
Thank you, Paxton. A Bowl 318, Big 12 not making the playoffs this year. Utah might, though. Utah is Iowa State of last year to me. Utah's good, but when you throw expectations on them, they never live up to it. Like we've seen this from Utah in the past, where they expect them to be very good. But Utah to me is just kind of like stuck in the mud in the program. And that's not a bad thing. I think they're more of a always going to be 9-3 max, or 10-2 max type team, to where 8-4 is like their like low point. I don't think they're ever going to compete or win a national championship. But I do like Cam Rising. Obviously, another Tom Herman mistake, choosing Casey Thompson over him. But, he made a lot of those.
Shout out to Tim Prangley. Appreciate you, buddy.
Mayhem Matthew. I believe you will see 5 teams with 1 loss or less: UGA, Bama, Ohio State, Clemson, and Baylor. Wow, 1 loss for Baylor. I agree with Bama and Ohio State. I haven't looked at Georgia's schedules enough, but they lose so – I know you reload. But that defense last year was so good, and you had another thing about that team. They were very NFL and veteran heavy on that defense. So I don't see them being as good on it. They're still going to be good, but they're not going to be that good. I mean, they gave up like 9 points per game last year.
I think if you go and look at Georgia's schedule, though, it's very easy. Their hardest games are going to be Oregon and Tennessee.
Okay. And do they go out to Oregon, or are they playing that game at a neutral site?
It's a neutral site. Well, they call it a neutral site.
Is it in Atlanta? In Atlanta? Oh, my. Yeah, the SEC and their magic with neutral site games.
Yes, we did, James Wilson. We beat Utah like a bad habit.
Is there a minimum number of wins for Sark this year as Arch Manning? He's not – okay. First off, this is the Manning family. This is not a typical recruit. This is 100% a business decision and a going forward to the NFL decision. The Mannings were not going to give their commitment unless they were 100% solid. The only way I see him not committing to Texas is if Texas repeats the exact same thing that happened last year. You go 5-7, and I don't think that's going to happen. So Arch Manning's on. I'm not even worried about that. As soon as he committed, I was like, it's over. If you saw how he did it, he tweeted. He didn't make some big charade or anything. That's how the Mannings operate. He's locked in my opinion.
Ben didn't Texas lose to Kansas at home in front of recruits. We did, and we're done talking about that. It's the revenge tour this year.
Wait, I'm trying to think which the recruit was that made a video when he was at Kansas and trolled us. I'm trying to think who it was, because I think he ended up actually committing to us. It was, I think, one of the guys that committed to us. I'm pretty sure. I may be wrong on that.
Was it Devontae Cook? Not
Devon Campbell.
It may have been.
I think it might have been. I think it may have been him and one other guy. And yeah, I think because I remember watching it. Same thing with Jonte Cook making fun of us and committing. It's one of those. Yeah. Some guys like to troll guys. That's just how they are. So they do that type of stuff, and then they'll commit to the same team. So it is what it is. That doesn't really bother me. 100%. He is important. I'm not saying that. That's what I'm saying is. He has such a personal relationship with Steve Sarkisian. It's the same thing with David Cutcliffe and Eli and Peyton. You have this guy that you trust in fully to develop you and you talk football with and also life with, to where that connection is really hard to separate, and that's why he's at Texas. He's not at Texas to, again, he wants to compete for national champions in his head, but number one is development and getting to the NFL for Arch Manning. Baylor could lose to BYU in week 2 because of all the new faces. That'll be a fun game. I believe that's in BYU, correct? Am I wrong about that? Or is that at Baylor? And also BYU's schedule, that's a hard schedule. They play a lot of good teams this year. They always have a decent schedule though, and they've always been a pretty decent program.
For sure. Who do you see as being surprises this year?
That's a good question. Surprises. I think LSU is going to surprise people. I really do. I like Brian Kelly. They got Jaden Daniels. I know they lost a lot, and their schedule's pretty hard. But I just believe in Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly is one of the most slept-on coaches in college football. The guy consistently wins 9 to 10 games every year, and it's hard to do that in Notre Dame with the academic standards and such. Obviously, though, Marcus Freeman putting on a recruiting clinic at Notre Dame right now. We'll see if he can take those recruits and put wins on the field. But I expect LSU to be kind of a surprise team. Trying to think around the country here. NC State I could see in the ACC being a little bit of a surprise. So those would be my two. What about you?
I want to say I'm bought in on Utah.
Okay.
I am bought in on Utah. I definitely I think it's going to be between Utah and USC in that Pac-12, and another one I think is going to be a surprise this year is going to be Tennessee.
Yeah, that's another one. I thought about that, but then I didn't want to throw in 2 SEC teams as well. I think they're going to be good. Josh Heupel's a lot better coach than Tennessee's had in the past under other guys. They finally kind of went out of the way and hired beneath them, quote unquote, where they were trying to get other big-time assistants, and that really has never worked out for them. And they went and got Josh Heupel at a lower-level school, and it's worked out. He's been pretty good there. I think he'll take them a step forward. Obviously, with NIL, that's going to help out a lot too. You have Nico Imalievia, I believe his name is pronounced, coming in next year. Get paid $8 million. I don't know if it's for a whole year why he's there, but that's insane. So I think that's another program that you could see rise to the top with NIL.
Yeah, definitely. Who do you think would be disappointing? Who do you think's overhyped?
Disappointing, overhyped. Who? Do you think Clemson has enough hype to be overhyped?
No, I don't. I think everybody is very down on Clemson this year because of what happened last year, and I don't understand that. They went 10-3.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting them to have this be a better team, but the ACC's gotten better to where they have basically the same type of record. So I don't think they're going to be overhyped. I didn't think they were hyped up as well. So I'm going to go with Georgia. I know the schedule's easy, but I just don't see them with Stetson Bennett. I think they're going to have to rely more on the offense this year, and I just don't see that happening. Obviously, the schedule, like you said, is favorable. I'm trying to think some other teams out there. Oklahoma, if you consider them hyped up this year, I just don't expect them to be very good. I think they'll be, for their standards, they're going to be an 8-4 team, in my opinion, 9-3. But compared to where you go 11-1 every year, I just don't see that happening. So those would be my two.
My two, I'm going to go with close your ears, Will, Notre Dame. I don't think that they're going to have the season everybody thinks they are. Kyron Williams, losing him. They do have one of the best tight ends in the nation, Michael Mayer. Lose Kyle Hamilton on defense, even though they brought in the kid from Northwestern, Brandon Joseph. I just don't think they're going to have a very good season this year. And my other one is going to be NC State.
Okay.
I think NC State is very overhyped. They do have a very good quarterback in Devin Leary. They do have a good stable of running backs. I think they're very suspect when it comes to receivers, and their defense is solid. But I just don't see them having the type of season that especially NC State fans are expecting out of themselves.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they're going to win. I think they'll compete for the ACC championship. I think, like I said, I think they're a dark horse. I think they can go 10-2, but I don't think they're going to go like 12-0, like maybe some of their fans think. I do expect someone in the ACC like a Wake Forest or Boston College or NC State. Like I said, I kind of just chose NC State out of that bunch of group of teams to have a above average or what is expected of them type of season.
Oh, yeah, there's a question. There was a statement up here made by LW. Shout out to him. When is Georgia going to overcome Texas? And before that, he said that Kirby Smart is Texas is 1-0 versus Kirby Smart.
Maybe a little bit of trolling because I don't want to play Georgia in a regular season game.
I don't either.
We're not built for that yet. So let's not talk about that. Like the bowl game is different. Like I agree. I hate how SEC people every time they lose a bowl game is like, oh, it didn't matter because they do still matter. Like if you're gonna play the game, it matters. But I agree there is like a level of intensity that gets taken down if you're expected to compete for national championship and then you're playing a bowl game. But I also think that's unwarranted based on what Georgia was at that time. Like you hadn't won a national championship in 40 years. You shouldn't have that entitlement to say that. Alabama, go ahead. You can say bowl games don't matter because guess what? For you, they kind of don't. You're playing in national championship games every year, but that's the only program to me that can get away with that.
Oh yeah, I agree. Joey Foster, his D4 is the closet mountaineer. I respect West Virginia. I think West Virginia is looked down upon, but after Texas and Oklahoma leave the Big 12, I think that the West Virginia Mountaineers is going to be the most how do I put this? The most talent-rich program historically in the Big 12 once we leave.
Okay. And here's a good question. This was pointed to me when we do leave, when Texas and Oklahoma leaves, who do you expect the next 10 years to take off in the Big 12? My answer to this was UCF. They've got the biggest, they're in the state of Florida. They're going to be the only team, I believe, yeah, they will be in the state of Florida that will play in the Big 12. You have a gigantic alumni base. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the campus. Look it up. It's absolutely beautiful. So I think they're going to take off.
I would go with West Virginia or Cincinnati.
Okay, Cincinnati would be my second.
Definitely, if Cincinnati keeps Luke Fickell and he keeps building that program the way he did, because you got to think, man, when he took them to college football playoffs last year,
and they competed.
Yeah, then they competed. So I would have to say Cincinnati or West Virginia, because West Virginia, I think, will be them, and Baylor will probably be the premier Big 12 programs when it comes to, like, I ain't gonna say blue bloods, but as far as historically rich programs.
Yeah, and Cincinnati, one of those things with Luke Fickell, I really don't think there's a job he's going to – I mean, he was looked at for all these jobs and didn't bite on any of them. I think Ohio State is his job. I think if that becomes available, he'd jump on it. I don't really see any other jobs he's just going to jump on because he stayed. And they gave him a nice raise. I don't see that happening unless he obviously, like, the Ohio State job comes open. And that's only going to come open if Ryan Day decides to go to the NFL. There was a question up here I wanted to go to. Okay, Paxton, what do you think about Michigan this year? I think that's a very interesting question. I think Michigan, they have to get away from Cade McNamara. If they have Cade McNamara as the starter, I think you're basically baked in with the talent loss on defense to an 8-4, maybe 9-3 type season. But with the backup, I forget his name. His name escaped me right now. J.J. McCarthy just came to me. That, I believe, provides a much higher ceiling for you. So I think as soon as they can get him into the starting role and play him most of the snaps, because, again, they're also talking about splitting reps between those guys, which is dumb to me. Just make the decision. Go with the more talented guy. He's a 5-star recruit, the only 5-star they've had at quarterback under Harbaugh. Please go with him. What do you think?
I think J.J. McCarthy does provide the most upside. I think they have a good set of running backs. Losing Hassan Haskins was definitely a big hit to them. But Blake Corum is a decent running back. I don't think he is the every down back that Hassan Haskins was. They lost, Ajobo on defense and Aiden Hutchinson, and those two are definitely going to be hard to replace. But I see them taking a slight step back, not, a huge step, but I say 9-3, maybe 10-2, losing to Ohio State and somebody that they probably shouldn't.
Yeah, Michigan is one of those teams this year. It's interesting. Like I think they overperformed last year, so I think they kind of regressed to the mean this year, especially with like you said, the guys they lose on defense. You lose Aiden Hutchinson, who is a very good pass rusher. I think will be decent in the NFL. I don't think he's going to be great like one of the Bosa brothers from Ohio State, and David Ajobo, I think, is very good. If he wouldn't have torn his Achilles, I think you would have seen him pop this year in the NFL. But I agree. I think 8-4, 9-3 is kind of what I expect from Michigan. And the Big Ten's hard, guys. I mean, you got Ohio State, you got Penn State. I think Michigan State again will regress a little bit, but they're still going to be a good football team. I actually expect Nebraska to take a step forward because I believe Casey Thompson behind a decent offensive line and the weapons they have in the defense, and then also the home field advantage. Those fans talk about faithful. Their team has sucked for a long time, and they always show up. I expect them to take a step forward. I expect Maryland. Guys, if you guys bet, take Maryland over 5.5 wins. Go look at the schedule. That team is way too loaded to win only 5 games, especially with the schedule they play. They have like 3 to 4 gimme wins, so you basically only have to win 3 other games in the Big Ten. I expect them to take a step forward, so I think that will be interesting.
Iowa State 5-7. I wouldn't go that far.
No, I wouldn't go that far either. I think they're a 7-5 team. I think they reverse it.
Joey Foster has a very good point. Paxton, you should join Patreon. We talk college football and streams every night, just a few bucks per month. That is definitely, if you guys are a Patreon member of Mark Rogers, it is definitely worth it to be in the Discord server. There's phenomenal guys in there, Joey Foster, Eric, Tim, all those guys that come out to support every show that Mark has, and we definitely appreciate you guys being here. And, you know, like you said, it's a couple of bucks a month, and have a fun time, and well, that's all we do is talk college football.
And it helps support Mark, guys, in this great channel that he's provided and all these other channels that he has under his brand. And like he said, he's very hardworking, does a great job, and you can talk with other college football fans. And Joey Foster, that's a 15-yard penalty. So no.
Yeah. I'm about to get out of here.
By the way, Texas fans do not care about that. We think it's stupid that they penalize it. We do not care. I hate how people are like, oh, you guys care. No, we don't care. The administration may care. We do not care.
To me, if we don't like it, we got to stop them from scoring and stop them from making plays.
100%. And now it does. I laugh all the time when I see random people doing it, like Oklahoma and West Virginia are playing, and you see horns down. Okay, you're thinking about us right now while you're playing another team. Have fun with that. We're rent-free 24/7 in your head.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. That's what I love about it. I was watching the College Baseball World Series, and you see whatever, and just random teams playing. You see a bunch of guys with the horns down and everything. I'm like, we're not even in the same bracket.
Yeah, I think I was watching a professional baseball game, and obviously Texas and professional baseball, and there were people doing. I was like, "What the hell is going on?" Like, we're not even. I don't understand it. And the thing is, too, people will probably say I'm a bandwagon fan. Or whatever. I'm a Yankees fan too, so I get like the hate of those teams, like just because of the brand and the history, and for whatever reason, people just love to hate on it. But it is what it is. It doesn't really bother me. It's more of like, oh, you think about it that much. That's kind of flattering. Especially with Texas, the past history, we haven't been good. You're still thinking about us.
Yeah, Eric.
It's just a college football game. Yeah, basically. Yeah, you got the Bloods and the Crips and the Longhorn haters right there. Charlie Armstead, the Iowa offense Iowa's offense is always bad. Them in Wisconsin, you know they're going to play really good defense, but their offense are never great. And that's another thing with the Big Ten that I hate. People have to realize, like, the Big Ten does have good defense. I'm not saying that. But when you go against other than Ohio State's offense and sometimes Purdue's offense for the most part, most of the teams are still living in the stone age of like the 1980s playing college ball where they just pound the rock constantly, and that makes the defenses look better than they actually are.
Yeah. Oklahoma is still butthurt because we lead the series 62-50.
I do it at the police. Heck, Texas has been living in the rent-free in the Big Ten for 10 years. Oh, my gosh. No, we don't need Maryland. No. Please, no. Mac Brown is – what you see at North Carolina is what you got at the end of Mac Brown's tenure here. So, basically, where you had the guy winning some big games, and then he turned around and loses to teams he should have no business losing to. So, I love him. He was a great coach while he was in his prime, but he just lost his touch over the last couple years at Texas.
I agree.
Who's y'all's dark horse for the Big 12? Good question. I don't think you can consider Baylor a dark horse. You can't consider Oklahoma dark horse to me just because of the history. Then Oklahoma State, obviously you can't. Baylor. I would consider Kansas State the dark horse. Like I said, I have them beating us at their place, and I just feel like it's Chris Kleinman's kind of like time to show himself into this party. He was a great coach in North Dakota State. I think he has the potential to be a great coach at Kansas State.
Do you think we could be considered the dark horse?
Yeah, that's the thing too. Yeah, I think we could, just because we don't have the history on our side, and we were obviously 5-7 last year. So yeah, I think we could be considered a dark horse.
Yeah.
So those would be our two, is Texas and Kansas, or for him, Texas, and myself, obviously, and then also Kansas State for me. Because obviously you can't say Oklahoma, like, they may not be hyped up to win the Big 12 this year, even though they kind of are in Vegas. I think they're still the favorite, but they've won it so many times, you can't really consider them a dark horse, in my opinion. Notre Dame, he already commented on this. I haven't really looked at Notre Dame's schedule too much. Obviously, I know they open up with Ohio State. I expect them. I think that'll tell you everything you know about Notre Dame's season right off the bat. I like them going forward. I think Marcus Freeman's a very good coach. They've recruited. They might end up with one of the number one recruiting class, which is insane to expect at Notre Dame, in my opinion, with, like I said, with the academic standards. So I like them going forward this year. D4 Sports knows more than I do, and so far, and he said they aren't going to be as good as they were last year, so I'll take his word on it.
Yeah, I just don't. I think they're going to be great going forward, but when Marcus Freeman gets his guys in there, he doesn't yet. He's still using Brian Kelly's recruits. So,
Sharice Armistead. You can think that, but it's not about winning and losing, because if that was the case, you wouldn't have Vanderbilt in there. You wouldn't have teams like, I mean, when you guys invented Texas A&M wasn't that great. And Texas is one of the 3 biggest brands in college football, in my opinion. So that's what it's about. They bring in money. They're going to be better at football eventually. Texas is not going to go 5-7 for the next 100 years. It's just not going to happen. They're eventually going to regress to what they are historically, and they're going to be better. So you may disagree with it, but they invited us.
Abel 318. I agree. It's going to be the quarterback play, and the lack of playmakers at receiver that's going to be the downfall of Notre Dame this year.
100%. And who was the little guy that they put in there that was supposed to be really good? He was kind of short. I forget his name. He was like he was supposed to be the next best quarterback that they've had. And they haven't had. That's actually been their issue for the longest time, is they haven't really had a good quarterback.
Right.
This is a good question. LW, who is a true freshman that is class going to make the biggest impact this year for Texas? I like Justice Finkley on the defensive line. I think he's versatile. I think he helps the run in the pass. I really like him. I think he's going to play right away, especially we don't have any great defensive linemen in front of him. We have a bunch of good ones, and that's where I think, like, if you look at depth-wise there, I think we have like 10 guys that are C+ to B- players on the defensive line, and I think he has the highest ceiling out of a lot of those guys.
I'm going to stick with my big guys, Devin Campbell and Kelvin Banks. I'm a big guy. I love big guy play. So I'm going to go with the big guys up front.
Joey Foster. Who are your 3 best quarterbacks in the Big 12 this year? He obviously thinks very highly of Dylan Gabriel. I like Dylan Gabriel. I don't love Dylan Gabriel. That's the thing, too, because if I'm expecting Quinn Ewers to be who I think he's going to be, I don't know if he's going to be great right off the bat, but I think he will be eventually. I like Blake Shapen from Baylor. I like Quinn Ewers, and obviously I like Dylan Gabriel as well.
I would go number 1. I would go Dylan Gabriel. 2, JT Daniels, and 3, I would have to go Shapen.
Okay. Yeah, and I think the Big 12, like I said, it's kind of a weird year for the Big 12 in general. There's not really established quarterbacks that played in the Big 12, other than, and he's not even really established, Blake Shapen, and then obviously you have Spencer Sanders at Oklahoma State. But Spencer Sanders has talent, but he's never consistent, so that's his biggest issue. If he had talent, all right, if he was more consistent, I would put him in the top 3, probably 1 or 2, to be honest with you. He's just not consistent.
He actually reminds me of Spencer Rattler, when he would have a good game and then he would completely just be horrible.
Yeah, I would agree with that. He's more like a little bit more mobile Spencer Rattler. And that's another thing I think they need to do too, is run him more. They don't really have any design runs. Most of it is what you see is him scrambling. I think they need to go heavy read option with him running the ball a lot too.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
JT Daniels reuniting with Harrell will make them win games they're not supposed to win. I don't disagree. There's a high side to West Virginia where you could talk me into where they're an 8-4, 9-3 team, but that's like a very small percentage to me. I don't see that happening. I think you're like I said. I think they're a 6-6, 7-5 team.
I think they're going 0-12. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding, Joey.
Yeah, that's a fun game too. I believe that's week 1, isn't it? Pitt versus West Virginia.
Yeah, it is. Backyard Brawl is
Yeah.
back, and it's already sold out.
I'm not surprised, but those for one, it's so odd to think about that Pitt and West Virginia just hate each other that much. To me, you don't think of that as like a big time college football rivalry, at least in my mind.
Yes,
But-
James Wilson. It is settled. Texas is way better than West Virginia. It is settled.
Unless they play us at Morgantown, or I mean in Texas. I mean, when we play in Morgantown, we're way better.
Yeah.
And that's another game that's always going to come to mind is that West Virginia. That was a really good game to watch, really fun game. West Virginia beating us with what's his name at quarterback, throws the horns down. With that was a beautiful throw in the back of the end zone when they beat us in overtime, and then or not in overtime when they went for 2 and beat us. I can't think of the quarterback's name. Will Greer.
Yeah, I was just kidding, Joey.
The eat shit Pitt chant. Oh, Sweet Carolina's legendary. Random comment, maybe, but Ohio State's way better than Texas. I mean, I don't disagree with that.
I have Ohio State as my number 1 team in the nation right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a debate between Bama and Ohio State, like I said, and then everyone else, basically. Let's see. I think we're going to go for another 5 to 10 minutes, guys, and then bounce out of here if that's okay with you, D4.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
West Virginia Pitt is week 0 on Thursday, September. Ooh, that's even better. That's fun. I like the week 0 games. I think it's cool to have one game that week that's really good or supposed to be really good. I remember watching Florida and Miami, and that was one of the worst games I've ever seen. Those teams were not prepared to play that game. It was cool that we had college football, but it kind of reminded me of like a week 1 or 2 NFL preseason game when the teams are not prepared to play.
James Wilson with another excellent comment right there. Texas has beat Ohio State 2 out of the last 3 games. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I believe we play them in Columbus in 2025. I'm from Ohio. Columbus isn't that far. If I'm still residing in the state, we'll see if I am. I might have to get tickets to that game, and they're going to be hard to come by, though, because they'll also be very expensive.
Yeah, James Wilson's just pulling out facts, though.
He is. Those are facts. You can't deny him.
That's right, Tim. Ohio State is a lot better than a lot of teams.
I would say they are better than 99.9% of all teams in college football right now. That's another thing. I think USC. I don't know what to think of them. They're starting to get all this hype, and it's really rare for a first-year head coach. I know it's the transfer portal era, but to come in and like be good right away. Even Nick Saban wasn't good right away. Kirby Smart wasn't good right away. Steve Sarkisian hopefully turns it around, but he wasn't good right away. So I just don't see that happening. I think they'll be good, but I don't see competing for national championship level good the first year. That'd be very impressive if he did that.
Mm-hmm. Nebraska and Northwestern. I'm high on Nebraska this year.
I am too. I think they're going to be an 8-4 type team. I think so. Look, guys, look at their record last year. Obviously abysmal, but they're kind of like Texas. They were in every game they played. They were in the Ohio State game. They should have beat Michigan. I believe they played in a week 0 game last year versus Illinois. Another god awful football game. They legitimately gave that game away. They had a guy catch a punt on the 1-yard line and stumble back into the end zone. Like that, they were bad in some spots last year, but they were always in the game. So I expect them to turn around. That's the thing too. People need to realize, like, if you're a team that won close games, especially this is a bigger thing in the NFL, but it happens in college too. If you won close games, you can expect some of those close games to turn into losses, where if you lost close games, you expect some of those to turn into wins as well.
Right. I think they were the thing is funny what people say they're the greatest 3-9 team ever being assembled.
Yeah. Well, weren't they there was a bunch of COVID cancellations for bowl games and they were on the list, like they were trying to get into a bowl game, I believe.
Yeah.
I think that was
it's when NC State and Was it UCLA?
I think it might have been. I know or who was the team that got in at 5-7? I forget who it was. Rutgers. Yeah. So I think Nebraska was on that short list as well. That would have been funny, a 3-9 team in a bowl game.
See,
100%, Tim. I agree with that. Kirby and Saban didn't have the transfer portal. That's the only reason I'm even considering USC to possibly like a 1 to 5% chance that they could compete or win a national championship. But I just don't see it happening because you still have to establish the culture. I still don't trust the defensive side of the ball. The offense is going to be good because Lincoln Riley is one of the 3 best offensive play callers in the country. Would you agree with that statement, D4, or would you disagree with that statement?
Oh, I completely 100% agree.
Yeah. I think it's him. I think it's Lane Kiffin. I think it's Steve Sarkisian. And I think Ryan Day you could argue there. But it's the amount of talent that man has at his disposal at the wide receiver position. I think there's some homeless people you could pull off the street and you could score 40 points a game with that Ohio State offense.
I would, if we were able to, I would make Brian Hartline the highest paid receiver coach to ever coach in the game if he would just come to us.
Oh yeah, I'd pay him just as much as Steve Sarkisian if they want. I mean, the amount of talent they have in that wide receiver room, guys, is absolute insane. When you have Marvin Harrison Jr. sitting on the bench basically for a year and a half because you have guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba, Garrett Wilson, and Chris Olave at your wide receiver position, you're doing something freaking right.
That's exactly right.
I wouldn't shock me this year. I think Jackson Smith, it's kind of like the Xavier Worthy thing. It wouldn't shock me if Jackson Smith at Jigba is a better player, and you see him obviously be amazing in the NFL, but his numbers take a step back because someone like Marvin Harrison Jr. steps up and opens it up a little bit more.
Oh, you got Julian Fleming. And yeah. I knew Will would be coming in with a comment. He's a Notre Dame fan.
Yeah, I know. I see him all the time on Mark's channel. Thank you for calling in, Will, and commenting also here. And sorry, man. I mean, you got to sell it like it is sometimes. USC is not good enough to be a playoff team this year. Ridiculous media opinion. Okay, fair enough. I like that. That's a little grounded opinion there from I would assume USC fan. That I respect that because myself as a pretty grounded Texas fan the last couple of years, I've been very consistent what I think this team could possibly be. Like I said, there's always a possibility for your team to in that 1 to 5% chance range to always, go 10-2, 11-1. But realistically, what do I think this team is? I think Texas is an 8-4, 9-3 team. I think USC is probably a 9-3, 10-2 team just because they play in the Pac-12.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have USC losing to Utah. And I can't remember who the other one I had them losing to. I did their preview a few weeks back.
Out of Oregon?
Let me look at their schedule real quick.
That's another team that I think could surprise people again this year because I like DTR. I think UCLA will have a better year than they had the last couple of years. I think Chip Kelly's finally gotten his players in there, and DTR again. He's kind of like the Spencer Sanders of the Pac-12. He's talented, but he's very inconsistent.
Oh, I had them losing to Utah and Notre Dame.
Okay. So 10-2. Is the are they playing at Notre Dame this year?
It is at home. Okay. It's at USC.
I don't know. Do they actually have that? Is that a thing? They're actually and is it real gold or is it just something like looks like gold? And no, it's not a recruiting violation. I mean, they're just holding it. I don't think they're giving gold bars away. If they are, I mean, that would make sense why they have such good recruiting classes upcoming year.
Yeah, the ratings would be crazy, Tim Bringley.
Yeah, that first game between Ohio State and USC in the Big Ten is going to be very entertaining, interesting, and going to be very highly rated, obviously. Now, here's a question. Texas versus pick an SEC team, Ohio State versus pick one of the teams coming in from the Pac, or pick USC basically, versus one of the teams in the Big Ten. Who do you think has higher ratings? Like an Alabama versus Texas game? Well, we'll see that this year. Let's say Texas versus Florida in the swamp versus USC versus Ohio State.
I think it'd be if you say Florida, I would probably say USC, Ohio State, because Florida, they don't have very good expectations this year at all.
Well, I'm saying down the road.
Down the road. Yeah, down the road. It just means more in the SEC.
We'll get those shirts printed up and burn orange and white.
Right. It just means more.
I think that's another game. I was going to go because my friend goes to LSU, go to the LSU game, and then obviously COVID hit. That would have been an insane atmosphere. I'm hoping to make that trip when Texas does enter the SEC. I think that will be fun. I think LSU's probably it's the top 3 atmosphere in college football, home field wise. Arguably number 1. I think Penn State and LSU come to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Penn State would be very entertaining.
I'm so excited for us to go into the SEC because I live in SEC country, and it'd be very much closer for me to go see games. And I'd like to see these stadiums. I'd like to see an LSU game at night versus Texas, and Jeffrey Russell, Big Ten all the way.
It would be very fun. It opens up so many matchups, and that is the one one of the positive things of this conference realignment. You get so much better matchup wise, but obviously I also don't want to have those like smaller schools unincluded from the party. I don't like that either. But it is fun to have the big blue blood matchups like Texas versus LSU, Texas versus A&M. Hopefully gets rekindled versus Arkansas every year. That was really fun when we went there. Not a fun result, but a fun game to watch with the atmosphere. So I think that's fun. Baton Rouge at night is unbelievable. Oh, I bet it is. I mean, think about it. You have all those SEC raging, those Cajuns from Louisiana, freaking getting plastered for the whole 12 hours, and then showing up to the game. So yeah, I bet it is unbelievable. Yeah. That would not be fun. It would probably be fun because I heard Fayetteville is very beautiful, and that is, the environment was fun, but the game result was not fun, especially that second half.
Yeah, me too, Traveling Fools. I'm glad the SEC is finally adding good teams.
Yeah, they sucked for the longest time. They had to add like the great teams like Texas and Oklahoma, right? It'll be interesting. Do you think there's a possibility of teams getting kicked out of conferences because they don't bring enough?
I think that they could find reasons to, especially when the TV deals come up about, and they're going to keep Vandy in the SEC. That keeps up the GPA.
Yeah, that's the thing. I feel like you have to it brings something. But for example, if Kansas's basketball program ever fell apart at some point, I mean, what do they bring? They don't really bring anything. So the Big 12 would be smart to, if that happens. I don't think it's going to happen, but that's an example. And I think the first time that happens, I think that could open up a floodgate of it happening all around the country.
Oh yeah. They're definitely trying to find loopholes to get them out of there and bring in a better team. So
yeah.
What's up, Golden Blue Dude? Another contributor to the Mark Rogers channel.
Yeah, what's Golden Blue Dude? What is your opinion on West Virginia this year? Okay, he said it. Texas. Oh, he's saying Texas.
Including a win over his Mountaineers.
8-4 that's what I expect. So I'm fine with that. I think anything under 8-4 is 100% a disappointment, but 8-4 and better, I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
That is a good question. I don't know when. I think all this conference realignment is probably going to have to get settled first. I know the contract runs out in 2025. I also hope they don't just completely expand it to where it devalues everything. I don't want 16 teams. I think the max you should go is 12. I personally like 10, but we'll see what happens. What is your opinion on that? Do you think what's your magic number for conference or playoff expansion?
Well, I think if the Pac-12 and Big Ten wouldn't have voted against it, I think those are the two, right?
I know the Pac-10 did, which doesn't make any sense to me because you could use that. Like, you kind of need that for you to get in. And yeah, I think the Big Ten did as well, which makes sense.
Yeah, but they had the coalition together
Yeah, that's
going
true.
on, and
Yeah.
then the big
Yeah,
then the Big
Big
Ten
Ten
was like,
stabbed
turn
them.
your back.
Yeah.
So I think the next time it comes around, uh, it'll be passed.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, Eric. 8 to 10 to me fits perfectly. 8 because I mean I think it's easy if you still have the conferences like you have them now. You get the Power Five automatic bids in there with the 5 teams, and then you just take two of the best teams from the Power Five, two other teams from the Power Five, and then I think the outside of the Power Five, you should always include that best team. So that's what I would do personally. But 10 wouldn't be bad either. But anything more than that, I don't really like. I don't like the NBA's postseason for that fact. You're having 20 teams basically make the postseason. That's too many. You don't need more than half of your sport making the postseason. Obviously, in college football, that wouldn't be half your sport, but it's still like out of the teams that matter, it's basically half if you did 16.
Yeah, I agree with Roger Dodger. Nobody's going to risk their TV contract money.
It's going to be ridiculous for a college team to play 17, 8 games to win an 90. I don't disagree with that. The player safety thing does come into a point, but I also think you could take out a game or two and just play 10 games instead of 12 for your regular season and be able to expand the playoff. And you could also add in another bye week if you wanted to. There's ways to make it work.
Oh, Jeffrey Russell has a point. Get rid of conference championships and go to an 11-game regular season.
Yes, you could do that as well. I do like the conference championship games though, and then
Yeah, yeah.
that does get rid of like an automatic qualifier if you were to have that, which I think would be kind of cool because that would give more incentive to win your championship. In some cases, there's really not an incentive to do that.
All right, see you, Ben.
Eric, save the madness for March. Yeah, March Madness is amazing, but I agree, save that for basketball. You don't need it with football. It's too many games. Believe me, like Mark said all the time, if there was a czar of college football, which there needs to be going forward at some point very soon, because I think this thing could get off the rails real quick with all the NIL stuff, and I think you would have balanced scheduling and that sort of thing. Wow, Golden Blue to 9-3 for West Virginia. That's quite a hefty prediction. But that's why like fans, guys, when you have guys with channels and they're fans of the teams, you get these type of predictions, and there's nothing wrong with that. You believe in your team wholeheartedly. You should. You're a fan of that team, but I just don't see West Virginia going. I think that's the perfect scenario for West Virginia. I don't see them like if you play the scenario out 100 times, I don't see them going 9-3 more than not.
Yeah, the over under for West Virginia is 5.5. So I think they may exceed that, but
Texas Tech. So do they play Oklahoma? They play them in Morgantown this year, I believe. I mean, they could win that game, I guess. Baylor, you think you're going to beat Baylor though? I don't see that.
I like LW's comment.
Yeah, both race West Virginia. That's the point when Texas is like returning to the point where they should be, is where they start killing teams at home that are good but not great. If they start doing that, that's when Texas is going to start to take off again. So if they boat race West Virginia, that bodes well, obviously, going forward. And they need to do that consistently too. Like you can't just do it one game versus West Virginia and then play Iowa State at home and only beat them by 3 or lose to them.
Right.
So Rob thinks we're going to play Baylor in the Big 12 championship game. 100% a possibility. Definitely could happen. It's going to be. This is the most open the Big 12's been open. Like the last couple 5 to 7 years, basically, you've just been able to pencil Oklahoma into the Big 12 championship game and then just guess their opponent, basically. I don't think you can do that this year.
No, definitely can't do this year.
And it would actually surprise me if Oklahoma made the Big 12 championship. To be honest, it would be a little bit of it would surprise me, but it would also like leave me feeling bad about the future for Texas, because if Brent Venables is doing that in his first year, it can only get worse for us, I feel like.
Well, maybe we just beat them into submission for so many years over the next couple of years that Venables says, "Okay, I've had enough," and he just becomes an analyst on our defense. So,
hopefully, Texas beats a top. Damn, West Virginia's going to be top 25.
I'll take it.
I mean, yeah, it'd help us out, but we'll see. I don't know their schedule very well other than Pitt, so I wouldn't imagine it's super hard.
West Virginia schedule. They have Pitt on a Thursday night. They have Kansas, Towson, Virginia Tech, Texas, Baylor, Texas Tech, TCU, Iowa State, Oklahoma, Kansas State, and Oklahoma State.
They played Virginia Tech before Texas?
Yes, the game before Texas.
Okay. That's pretty, I mean, two pretty, like, pumped-up games back-to-back. I feel like that'll be pretty interesting for them. I think best-case scenario there, they split it. I don't see them going 2-0 there, and I most likely, if I had to bet on it, I'd probably say 0-2. LW. Well, nice 56-21 win. I mean, that'd be nice.
I don't like that 21. It's like me, like let's get like the 3.
Hey, we gave up 33 points per game on defense last year. I'll take 21 consistently if we can do that.
That's true.
I mean, if this team were to make a 12-point per game decrease in their points per game allowed, that'd be phenomenal by Gary Patterson, Pete Kwiatkowski, and those guys.
Oh, yeah. Appreciate that, Traveling Fools.
Yeah, thank you very much. And again, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. I'm thinking we're going to take 3 more questions and then jump out of here, but we've had a great time. We'll probably do this 1 to 2 more times before the season starts, if you're down for that, D4. And
always.
I've had a great time doing it. That's why that's why I have West Virginia losing to Texas, because it's after an emotional gas tank empty win over Virginia Tech, so Texas should win. Okay, that's fair.
I can agree with that.
Yeah, I agree that that's a principle. Like, if you think your team's going to be at least 8-4, 9-3 type team, and you have 2 emotional games back to back, then you probably think they're going to go 1-1 in those games. If you just think they're going to be a average to bad team, they're going to be 0-2. If they're going to be great, they're going to be 2-0. So I can see that if you're going to go 9-3, it makes sense to split there. If Texas D brings down to 28 points, I disagree with that. They bring it down to 28 points per game, I think they can win 10 games.
Yeah.
I think if they just stayed last year at 33 points per game, let's say the defense stays the exact same, they're going to win 1 to 2 more games still, just because I think the offense is going to be very good. And you saw those some of those close losses will just switch automatically.
Right. How does it?
I would love to do a live show with you, Golden Blue Dude. I'll definitely hit you up. I'll go on your channel and hit your email up.
I have his number, so
okay, yeah, that'll work too.
Text him.
We can just go us 3 jump in.
Yep.
Franklin Conants. I think Baylor is the team to beat. I don't disagree with that. I think there's like 4 or 5 teams in the Big 12 that could possibly win the championship, and Baylor's definitely one of those teams, obviously winning it last year. We got 2 more comments, guys, and we're going to be out of here. But again, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. Go over to D4 Sports, subscribe to him, like his content. And to go over to MarkRogersTV, all his channels, subscribe to him, like him. Even if you don't watch him, guys, it really helps build his brand. So just go subscribe to him, please. Laters, guys, sorry. It's my duty to do the horns down. Fair enough. Like we talked about earlier, that's the gang sign, so. They did lose a lot, but again, on the defensive side of the ball, if you look at those guys, the guys they lost, there weren't a lot of NFL players on that roster. So anytime you don't lose NFL players and you kind of just lose good college football players, I think Dave Aranda is capable of building up that defense to do the same type of thing as last year. I'm not saying they'll be as good, but they can still be in that ballpark. And then I think with Shapen, it opens up the offense to where you can be a little bit more explosive.
Mhm.
So that's where I think it kind of evens out.
Yeah, I think Chafin brings the element that Bohannon didn't.
And this day and age, guys, you can't win games unless you play in the Big Ten again, like those Iowa versus Wisconsin games. You can't win games or win most games 17-14. You're going to have to score in the 30s to win football games. Thank you, LW, for checking out the show. We'll see you next time. One more comment or question type thing, guys, and then we'll head out of here. Give me a good one to end on. This is true. I still remember when SMU was a powerhouse in Texas. That was, when you were legally giving out Trans Ams to Eric Dickerson, which now you can do that legally, but the thing is everyone can do that now.
How many scholarships? Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. Starting O-line left to right. Okay, so are we saying to start the season, or who do I expect to play the majority of games? Because I think there's going to be some movement, guys. Or do you think, like, who plays the most games? Because that's the question here. If you answer that, I'll let you know. Right now, if I were to guess, if the majority of games played for offensive linemen, I'd go Carriage at left tackle. I'd go Angelau at left guard. I'd go Majors at right guard, or Majors at center, and actually flip Angelau to left guard and Hayden Connor to right guard, or left guard, sorry. And then right tackle, I expect Christian Jones. But if you're talking about guys I think could play some games and also contribute and possibly take a job, I expect Devon Campbell to take at some point later in the season, could possibly take one of the center position or even a guard position. And I expect Kelvin Banks, especially if Christian Jones struggles and doesn't make any improvement from last year, I expect Kelvin Banks to take over that right tackle position. What about you, D4?
Oh yeah, that's exactly the lineup that I have. I expect both of those guys, Kelvin Banks, and even if a Cam Williams comes in, I think he's flexible to go anywhere on that offensive line except for center.
Yeah, I think the three guys to keep our eyes out on are Cam Williams, Kelvin Banks, and Devon Campbell. If you're going to say
Hudson.
something? Yeah, Cole Hudson. Those four guys, I think you could see possibly play a decent amount of snaps this year, along with the other five guys that I mentioned earlier. So those are the 9 guys that I look out for on the offensive side of the ball. I trust that line. The defensive line is the one where I think we need to hit recruiting hard and get better at. We have good guys there. We don't have any great guys. We definitely don't have a pass rusher like a Joseph Osai, and you need one of those, if not multiple, to be elites at the college football level.
No, Sharice.
Okay, guys, I think that's going to do it here on Mark Rogers TV. Thank you for watching us. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe. We're going to do more content like this in the future. I'm Matthew Miller. This is D4 Sports. Please go subscribe to his channel, like his content, and stay tuned. Obviously, I'll be here after every Texas game, win or loss. And let me tell you, last year was up. I'm hoping this year's better. Please, like I said, subscribe to the Texas channel. We'll have the 40 Acres post-game show. We'll have some more content coming out in the future along with D4 Sports. We'll probably do a collab here with the golden blue guy. And please like this content. Please subscribe. Thank you very much. It's been a great time, D4.
Yeah, buddy.
Hook 'em.